Death Stranding, mechanically, is one of the most exciting and creative games published by PlayStation since Dreams. Before that, I don't really have a strong answer if it wasn't made by Media Molecule. Death Stranding is a misunderstood masterpiece. It has more in common with a game like Dreams, wrapped up in the high-fidelity, celebrity-filled presentation of a Naughty Dog game, than it does with a Naughty Dog game itself. Because of that, a lot of people may have felt misled when picking the game up back in 2019 and being met with a Hideo Kojima game, TM, potentially for the first time. Since launch, the game's positioning alongside other first-party PlayStation titles led to a number of common criticisms that decry Death Stranding for being different. Hi, my name is Christian, this is Rantable, and Death Stranding is one of the best games ever made. Here's why you're wrong about it. This is a spoiler warning. We are talking about a lot of themes from Death Stranding and showcasing some cutscenes from throughout the game, but we avoid specifics. One of the first misconceptions about Death Stranding we need to work through together is this idea that the story is incomprehensible. At its core, Death Stranding is a game about human connection, why we need connection, what happens when we become isolated, and how, despite the fear behind trusting others, it is essential for success. Every single element of this game is about this idea. The often called complex dialogue between distractingly recognizable celebrities is only one part of how this story unfolds. Death Stranding, like many Hideo Kojima games, uses the medium of video games to take advantage of storytelling capabilities that can't be utilized via books, film, or other popular forms of entertainment. There is a relationship between the player and the mechanics which lends to building on and telling this post-dystopian story of connection. The multiple tiers in which Death Stranding's story unfolds basically ends with the cutscenes full of sci-fi jargon, void outs, bridge babies, and repatriates. Beneath all of that surface level stuff, it's fleshed out with symbolism, like a world shattered by the human condition, haunted by those who linger, and their presence being destined to lead to more destruction. The connection between Sam and BB, artificial umbilical cords, Sam being covered in handprints and his aversion to touch. All of these are just a few examples of how the visual language and rules of this world work to draw the player further into its story. When playing the game, it is very clear that Death Stranding is about these concepts. Sometimes it's portrayed in blunt imagery, but it's all servicing this singular vision. It is, however, so much more involved than just what it presents through audio and video. This is a video game, after all, so the storytelling and means of which Death Stranding conveys its narrative entirely begins with the physical interaction enacted by your control of the game. Before you type, I know, but it doesn't feel good to play. Being one of the most deliberate play experiences in the modern Sony stable, Death Stranding has received a whole lot of flack for its game feel. It doesn't pick up and immediately call upon your skills you've developed in games like Horizon or Ghost of Tsushima. But is this bad? If you ask me, not in the slightest. Death Stranding's gameplay not only makes choices that makes it engaging and rich with meaning to its friction, but also causes the game and its systems to be more interesting than many games where I've just found myself on autopilot a lot of the time. The controller you use has a variety of inputs that act as the extremities of Sam in the game, almost mirrored in relation to his own limbs. The triggers, bumpers, and sticks of your controller will let you sprint or crouch to use your momentum while running up and down hills or jumping over gaps. Bracing your upper body to more efficiently use your stamina helps you balance and prevent an unfortunate accident that will put you, and more importantly, your cargo, at risk. Moving Sam through the world can be tedious. It doesn't feel bad in ways other games feel clunky or asynchronous, with your inputs not matching what you're seeing on screen, but you do seriously need to account for the terrain you will be traveling across. That planning stage alone is more than most games ask when you set out to simply walk across their maps. This treacherous world makes things like vehicles more meaningful, sure, but even more impressive is it makes the player value something as simple as rope. Ladders, more durable boots, and exoskeletons you can invest in to make you more capable in more environments suddenly feel much more rewarding than a game where you wouldn't even need to think about walking through it. When the world's very nature can lead to your failure very easily, any way to combat it becomes valuable. Much like real life, even a well-planned method can go haywire by something unpredictable. Just as Sam needs them to work through his struggles in cutscenes, Sam is controlled by the player, needs to rely on others in these instances where his own planning and ability is not enough. Enter the Strand genre. The internet ridiculed the idea of the Strand game when Kojima first unveiled it. Honestly, I cannot blame them. It sounds ridiculous, but in reality, this cooperative experience is almost entirely new. Upon booting up the game, every player is placed into an instance where they are collaborating invisibly with other Sam Porter Bridgeses. You'll find missing cargo in the world, dropped by another player's Sam after taking a tumble, running from BTs, or dodging mules. You see this, and know that if it were you, that one extra piece of cargo could have given you just a few more resources that you could have used for better boots, which we've established has so much value thanks to the treachery of this world. Death Stranding bets on the good in people, not only with its traditional cinematic story moments, but in a million instances like this you'll frequently come across as you play. You know how cruel this world can be, and the game knows you'll want to help out others because you would want them to help out you. It bets on the good in people, but most importantly, it bets on the good within you. If it was just this lost cargo mechanic, almost guilting you into doing something selfless for someone you'll never know and probably never interact with, Death Stranding would be impressive on delivering on this new concept, the Strand game. But that's not all Death Stranding is. Despite what you may think, it's not just an Amazon simulator or a walking simulator. This game tasks you with rebuilding a country and making America whole. To accomplish this Herculean feat, you travel across the country to plant the seeds of a new sci-fi internet, but as you scale mountains and trudge through muddy valleys, you come across tools and infrastructure other players have built on their journey across the country. After hours of balancing on unstable paths you mark out for yourself to get from point A to B, you will stumble across a road built by a player whose name you may even recognize as someone whose cargo you picked up hours earlier. You step onto the road and suddenly your gear isn't having its battery drained. You don't have to worry about your balance. You find a moment of relief in a hostile world. You can just walk this path laid by another player who spent their own time and resources building this out for the sake of every porter in this instance. Did they do this for themselves? For you as a thank you for helping them out? In the end, it doesn't even matter because they still did it. Death Stranding on every level of play, from passive to extremely involved mechanics, bets on humanity wanting to do better, be useful, and help each other simply because they should. It bets on collective action being what makes life easier for everyone, and earnestly puts these tasks in your capable hands. Considering that a lot of infrastructure like bridges and shelters and roads can all be contributed to by each individual SAM within an instance, it seems very clear this is what the Strand game is about. All of that may be seen as taxing, and it's supposed to be. It wouldn't feel rewarding otherwise. This anecdote is just one example of the decisions Death Stranding makes as an interactive piece of art to create a sort of symbiotic relationship between the player, Sam, and the community of porters playing together. Other decisions feed into this, like the combat, which feels bad. You know what should feel bad? Violence. Death Stranding in its stance on violence is fascinating because it so strongly pushes on its belief in the good of the human condition on so many levels, but the reality is violence is a part of that existence. Another common criticism of Death Stranding as a game from the same camp that calls it an Amazon delivery simulator is that the shooting in the game is bad. Violence in-game, as in real life, comes at a great cost to the one enacting it. Should you kill an enemy in the game, you need to dispose of it at a certain point on the map, which is likely out of the way from wherever you may be delivering. If you don't make this trek to dispose of it, it will lead to that part of the map becoming more treacherous to traverse, and potentially kill Sam. The game actively punishes the player for resorting to lethal violence, yet some wish it felt more fun to do. While yes, the shooting not feeling as fun as it could may make the game less appealing than others in regards to having shooting as a core mechanic, it feels clear to me that this decision was made intentionally to stand by the game's beliefs and message it's working so hard to convey on every level of interaction. Compare this to a game like The Last of Us Part 2, another Sony-published game of the PlayStation 4 generation. It also tackles the idea of violence, specifically the destructive cycle of violence. It is one of the most satisfying stealth combat systems in a AAA game since Metal Gear Solid 5, and makes the message feel a bit muddled in response. This sort of disconnect with the game was only exacerbated for some people when the Part 2 remaster added a roguelike mode as a selling point. A literal cycle of violence. While not every game attempting to tell a story concerns itself, or should be expected to concern itself, with what the form and function of gameplay says in relation to the overall story, Death Stranding and Kojima's games take the time to do so, oftentimes against the best interest of the player and their experience, which makes it more impressive and respectable, at least for me. If you're considering going back to or picking up Death Stranding ahead of the release of Death Stranding 2 on the beach in 2025, I have a simple request. Get to the moment before you decide whether or not this game is for you. A major element of Death Stranding is how it uses its presentation to elicit emotion out of the player. The surface level story of BTs, Higgs, and Amelie is full of suspense, melodrama, and incredible performances with one of many career bests out of Troy Baker. But all of that, for lack of a better word, is done to craft a vibe. The vibe of Death Stranding is so essential to its idea of connection because it's what connects the game to the player. It's what makes you even begin to care about making life easier for other porters, or setting out to connect the United Cities of America and deliver action figures to Jeff Keighley, coffee to Sam Lake, and Conan O'Brien. Beyond its star-studded cast and striking art direction, a big component to Death Stranding achieving its atmosphere is its soundtrack. The game pulls from a variety of artists, which Kojima is very public about loving, like Churches, and a big reliance on Low Roar, but a special moment in the game, towards the end of the early chapters, uses music from the silent poets to elicit the feeling of capability and belief in yourself and humanity, which, if it hits, will give you an emotional rush that will carry you through the rest of the game. I won't spoil the exact details of it, as the way it comes together is truly beautiful and one of the best moments I've experienced in a game, full stop. And it worked both times that I played it. If you play Death Stranding, try not to get caught up on what every line of dialogue means or what every doohickey does for the history of the world. Instead, let the game wash over you like a gargantuan wave and see where it takes you and how it makes you feel. At the very least, make your way to Port Knot City before deciding if the game is just not for you, or if the common complaints were wrong and the game is truly an all-timer. Death Stranding is a hefty beast of a game, dealing with a reality that sees humanity isolated in shelters, scared of going outside to touch grass or making connections with their neighbors, and relying on internet to make up for all that. It released in the fall of 2019, right before that game's reality became reflected in our own. So on that level, even if you have played Death Stranding already, like me, it is fascinating to revisit the game with hindsight. Ahead of Death Stranding 2 on the beach, a game whose spirit we know little about, other than a question asking, should we have connected? There has really never been a better time to see Kojima's latest game with your own eyes to develop your own understanding, experience, and connection to the world of Death Stranding. If you tried before but have been convinced to give the game another whirl, please let me know. I already really enjoyed the game in 2019, but upon replaying it, it's top 3 all time for me personally, and I find reasons to put it higher nearly every time I think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts, should you give it a go, either for the first time or revisiting it. And for my fellow porters who feel how I do about the game, keep on keeping on. I will see you in Death Stranding 2. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Be sure to let us know what you think of Death Stranding. As always, you can stay tuned to Game Rant for more videos like this.